podcast where people reach their goals and develop confidence one mind shift habit at a time. Let's join our host, certified coach Christina.
Sorry about that. Those of you all that have been following me for a while, you know my story. You know that I was a former competitive gymnast and that I've been coaching gymnastics now for quite some time. And it's always a pleasure for me to have guests who are in the same industry that is my passion. And on this episode, let me just, before I tell you what this episode is about, how many of you out there listening have a gymnast and her goal is to compete in the Olympics? Right. I know that was mine too when I was a young gymnast. And it's a question that I was always asked. And even my gymnasts are asked, do they want to go to the Olympics or when are they going to go to the Olympics? And I, as a coach, get asked, are you coaching any Olympians? And I'm happy to say that on this episode, I actually have a coach and his gymnast who made that ultimate goal. And I'm super excited for them to be joining me. And so I'm going to give you a moment to press the share button, make sure that you invite people who this can resonate with. And even if your athlete doesn't do gymnastics, the road to the Olympics, which is the title of this episode, is one that is unique and interesting. And I'm excited to have this conversation with my guest. Please help me welcome by putting some love in the chat. Help me welcome Eddie Umphrey and his gymnast, Raegan Rutty.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
How are y'all?
Great. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all for joining me. As you heard me say as I was talking to the audience, that road to the Olympics is one that is unique, is challenging, but nevertheless is that ultimate goal that everyone has. And so I am honored to be able to hear you all share that with the listening audience. And we're going to just go ahead and get started into this. I would like for each of you to share your story and what brought you into gymnastics.
Eddie, you can go first.
Actually, you're going to go first.
Oh, me? Okay. Okay. So, hi, I'm Raegan, first of all.
Hi, Raegan.
So I was born and raised in the Cayman Islands. And for those of you who don't know, that's just a little tiny island south of Cuba. Growing up there, it's a really small country. Everyone knows everyone. And it's basically the term of takes a village. You know, everyone has an impact on your story. For me, a big person in that was my sister. When I was growing up, she did gymnastics, and just trying to be the annoying little sister I had to do gymnastics too. So that's how I actually originally got started in gymnastics, and I fell in love with it because I was able to flip around, get out all the energy that I had, because as a 4-year-old, I think I had the energy for 10 million 4-year-olds. So for my parents and I, it was a very good investment at the time. And I just fell in love with it from the very beginning.
That is so awesome to hear you say that you were following in the footsteps of your older sister who was doing gymnastics. And I was going to ask you how old you were, but then you said 4 and having all of that energy. And I am so sure there are moms that are listening to us right now. They're saying, yes, I can identify with that. And so what was on your track when you came in, how long were you in classes? When did you go from just doing it recreational to becoming competitive?
So if I remember correctly, I was in obviously rec for a few years, and then you kind of move up the levels, as you know. When I was probably around 8 is when I first traveled for a competition. Nothing like FIG or anything like that, just simple USAG level 3 or 4. And then from there, when I was 12 is when it was my actual first international competition. So representing Cayman Islands rather than just the club that I was at in the Cayman Islands. I was just a junior qualified as a junior at that time because I wasn't 16 yet.
Mhm.
And I believe my first one was gymnastics in Montreal. So from there, I started competing for the Cayman Islands.
I have so many questions that I want to ask you about that, just because my experience with competing gymnastics as well as coaching gymnastics has only been here in the United States. And how different, well, I don't know that it was different for you, because that's what you knew in the Cayman. How many gyms in the Cayman Islands were available for you to do like inter squad meets?
One. There's only one gym, and there still is only one gym.
Wow.
There's 2 sets of bars, 1 vault runway. When I was there, only 1 high beam, like 2 medium beams, and like a low beam, and then a floor, but no pits or anything like that. So for me, I never grew up with a pit.
You know what? I am so glad to hear you say that, Raegan, because at my gym, my gymnasts do not have a pit. And ironically, when we take them to gyms that have pit to train some of their upper level skills, they do not like it. They're just like, I don't like this. This is not comfortable for me. So it does take getting used to. And thank you also for sharing that in your gym where you started, that building those foundational skills were so important, and you have the minimal equipment to be able to do it. I'm going to let Eddie introduce himself, because I want to know more about the transition where you finally decided that it was time to leave that gym, because that's a big question for a lot of parents. So Eddie, tell us your story. What brought you into gymnastics?
Yeah, well, kind of similar to Reagan. I grew up following both of my brothers. Both my brothers, they're 11, 13 years older than me. So, I was a really little guy watching them come up. Greg and Cheney, they both competed at UCLA. Cheney, as most of the fans probably know, competed in the Olympics and 5 world championship teams. So I actually grew up watching my brothers on TV more than I saw them at home because they were off at college. But I do remember just as a little kid before they went off to college competing, and I would sneak out onto the floor and just run and throw myself around and just bouncing off the walls. So that was my introduction. And of course, everything that your big brothers do, you want to be a part of. You want to do everything that they want to do. So that's how I got my start.
That is so interesting that both of you that you have very similar stories, in that you had a sibling or siblings involved in the sport, and that's what pulled you into it, and that you just continue to fall in love with it. And here's my next thing that I want to, as part of your stories. First of all, Eddie, remind everyone when your brother competed in the Olympics, because I know everybody's like, who is that? I want to go on YouTube.
Yes, Cheney competed in the 1996 Olympics. He also was the alternate for '92, which that's kind of where he really got his big fan base. Was if people go back, I actually have a segment of it on my Instagram from way back. He missed that '92 team. He was actually put on the team. They went back, changed the score, took him off, and he was 8/100ths of a point short. And I mean, you can imagine you trained.
Well, I think he'll be back with us in just a moment. Technology, you gotta love it, huh, Raegan? So
Yes, it's been rough.
For Eddie to come back, I would like for you to share with the audience, and part of your story, I would like for you to share, how long did your sister remain in it, and did you all ever compete against each other?
So, she kind of bounced back between gymnastics and swimming, and then ultimately just stuck with swimming. So we actually never really competed against each other, just because of how young I was.
Mm-hmm.
And when she decided to just stick with swimming. So it wasn't like a Maddie Ziegler, Mackenzie Ziegler, Dance Moms type sister rivalry at all.
That's very good to know. So you mentioned that your sister did swimming. Were you just 100% gymnastics all the time, or were there times when you also tried other things?
So outside of school, I only ever did gymnastics. I remember a couple times on the weekends would go to like a tennis camp, or surprisingly flag football, which I was actually the only girl and I was really good. I just want to put that out there. But I was lucky at my school. I went to a private school, so I was very fortunate that we were able to, we were required to take like swimming 3 times a week. PE, we were exposed to a bunch of different sports. So for me, I almost felt like I didn't have to leave gymnastics in order to get a taste of other sports.
That's really good to hear that you were open to doing other sports and that it wasn't, I know for some athletes, they get into that mindset, and even parents, they get into the mindset, it can only be gymnastics, it can only be gymnastics. And then the athlete ends up burning out from it. And it's funny that you mentioned that you did flag football, because some of my former gymnasts who retired, that's what they're doing now. And
it's so much fun.
That's what they said. And at their high school, they have like a whole flag football team. So they are not the only girls. So let's just say that Raegan, let's put it out there for the record, that Raegan opened the door for flag football for all the former gymnasts out there. So thank you, Raegan.
Yeah, I'll
Eddie,
coach it.
Go ahead, Raegan.
I was just gonna say I'll coach it somehow.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly
Throw a
right.
spiral.
Listen, we know that as a gymnast, we can begin in gymnastics and go anywhere. We have that ability to be able to cross over. So that's really good. So Eddie, before we had the technical difficulty there, you were sharing about Channing doing the Olympics. And were you a competitive gymnast as well?
Yes, I was a competitive gymnast. I competed for the University of Michigan. I always, growing up, wanted to go to UCLA because by nature, both my brothers were scholarship athletes there. But, unfortunately, they dropped the program. And, Michigan was just the best place for me. It was my number one choice. And, thank God I was able to go there. So, yeah, I competed 4 years at Michigan.
I remember here because I live in Georgia. In fact, I live in Athens, Georgia, where the University of Georgia is located. And I remember the year, it was either my freshman year or the year before my freshman year there, they dropped the men's program there. And it had such a ripple effect here locally, being able to have access to male instructors. Like, it's finding instructors anyway is difficult, but finding male instructors, that is a whole nother beast. I'm like currently sitting in that space because I haven't been sitting in that space for 10 years, but I'm currently sitting in that space where I need a male instructor. So just want to put that out there, Eddie. If you have some connects, please send them my way.
Okay, I'll keep my ear to the ground.
Please do. So you both have shared how your individual stories. I want to know how you both met. She's in Cayman Island. You're in Michigan?
I was in Houston, actually.
In Houston. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They're not close. So how did that happen?
Go ahead, Raegan.
Oh, okay. So my coach in Cayman at the time had a connection. She knew the gym owner that Eddie was at the time. So I went there to kind of scope out because I'd kind of outgrown the gym in Cayman, and the deal with my parents was either I leave Cayman to do gymnastics or I go to boarding school. And I knew that I was not going to go to boarding school. My 2 other siblings did, but not for me. So I said gymnastics. I knew I didn't want to give it up or anything like that. And so I went to the gym. I tried it out, I guess you could say. And then that's how I met Eddie, was that day. And then I liked the gym. I thought I was going to get very far there. I just had a feeling. Mm-hmm. So then I guess my mom or whoever set up with the gym, they sent out announcements looking for host families, and I kind of went from there.
So you touch on, or you bring up a very common scenario for athletes, and there's a term called gym hopping, and we all know that does exist, and it's very prevalent here in the States specifically. But you mentioned that you had outgrown the gym and that your coach knew Eddie and had that connection. I would like for you to share with the audience, how did you know? Was it your parents figuring it out, or was it your coach coming and you saying, hey, we've taken you as far as we can take you? How did you know it was time to make that transition?
So kind of like how you mentioned, a couple times a year, my team and I from Cayman, we would travel to places like in Florida, like Tampa, and train in pits, because you get to a point where, for us, like safety purposes, and we didn't even have a guy spot as well. So we were like, it was the world was against us trying to get higher level skills.
Mm-hmm.
And just the programming Cayman could not get me to my Olympic goal.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I was only 14 at the time. And when you're 14, you do not want to leave your safe little small loving country island. So it was more of obviously my mom, my parents, and my coach, because obviously adults figure out logistics better than a 14-year-old can. So they proposed the idea to me, and I remember it terrified me. Like, if anyone even said the word Texas, I just bawled crying, because I was like, no, I can't leave. But I got to a point where I was like, if you want it, you kind of have to put on your big girl boots and hit the road, Raegan. So that's how it was a mutual agreement.
That's really nice to hear. And I'd like to be a part when my gymnasts feel like it's time for them to transition on. I try to make it as comfortable with the parents and with the gymnasts as possible, because our community is really small. It's not that big, and we tend to run in the same circles. I know, Eddie, you know this to be true. Coaches are definitely in the same circle, and you want that always to not feel icky for the athlete. You want it to, I want to bless my gymnasts when it's time for them to transition and do that. So I'm so happy to hear that your coach was a part of facilitating that, and that it was, even though it was difficult for a 14-year-old to leave your family and go to Houston without them, it still would, I think it probably would have been a little bit more difficult had you not had the blessing of so many individuals.
Right.
So Eddie, from your perspective, how did that work?
It's like so embarrassing for some reason, hearing like from Eddie's perspective. I don't know why.
No, I remember it very vividly. I remember the day that her coach and Raegan came into the gym, and they told us, they said, we're looking to make the move, and like 90% of the kids that come to the gym said, I want to go to the Olympics. And, when people tell me that, I say, okay, great. And in the back of my mind, knowing that probably not even 1% of that 90% is actually committed to training like the Olympics. The one thing that I was, really kind of banking on is that her being from another country, is that she actually really would want to put in that work to be able to get to the Olympics. And, Raegan laughs when I say it, but I just remember she came in and she was showing us all of her skills. On vault, she had, and I only say this as to say how far that Raegan came, and also that it wasn't like Raegan had already made it and she came to us and we tagged along for the ride. Like, this was a complete team effort. My wife and I coached Raegan, and the three of us together, really started from almost scratch and got there. Right. But she came in on vault. She had a tuck suit that landed on her face in the pit. On bars.
Add that detail?
I'm just keeping it real. I'm just keeping it real.
It's the growth, Raegan. We want to hear about your growth.
Exactly. It's the growth. On bars, she had a free hip and a giant flyway. On beam, I don't even think Raegan had a series on beam yet. I don't. Did you have a back handspring then?
Yeah, I think I had like a walkover handspring and a tuck.
Yeah. So, and then on floor, on tumble track, I think she had it was either a front pull or a 1.5. So, and I say that as to say, how far Raegan came. We really just started from the beginning, and, all three of us just working together, just went to the grind over the years, and we got there.
Absolutely. It is. I love to hear the story, and I'm sorry it makes you cringe. It's cringeworthy for you, Raegan, but I love it. And I love especially that my audience is taking this in and they're listening, because you have to start from somewhere. And Eddie, you mentioned something that's super important. It is the dedication that's required, and also the understanding that less than less than 1% are even going to make it to the Olympics, even if they have the desire, even if they have the drive, because the reality is they have X number of slots to fill, and everyone with
That's
a
right.
dream or everyone that's attempting to go, they're not going to make it. So that's what makes it so unique and so special and such the draw, I think, for that to be an athlete's ultimate goal in their sport is to go to the Olympics. You know, what's better way than representing your team, your country, than to do that at the Olympics. Eddie, I want to ask you specifically for the parents who are watching, kind of help to them to understand at what age, what level does it become that the goal of the Olympics is, whoops, he's having some technical difficulty. But I could ask you this question too, Raegan. At what point would you have known that I need to make this transition to shoot for the Olympics as a goal? Like at what age, what skills would you say that was, you needed to do that?
So it's going to sound so cliche, but literally as long as I could, my little baby brain can remember, I knew I always wanted to go to the Olympics, especially because I would be the first ever Olympic gymnast for my country. And just knowing how much of a privilege that would be, I knew that it had to be me. And I think that was also one of my biggest motivations was like, I need it to be me. I don't want anyone else. It's like, maybe that sounds selfish, but I wanted it to be me because
Right.
I wanted it as long as I can remember. So I think for me, the jump of like, let's take it seriously. I actually remember I was a junior in high school. And like when I really realized, oh shoot, this is getting serious, was I was signing up for my senior year classes. And my mom said, you know, Raegan, that'll be 2020. You want to get your harder classes out now, so when 2020 comes, you can just full out train for the Olympics and have easy classes and just do electives. And I remember being like, whoa, I have to plan my classes around possibly training for the Olympics?
That is exciting. And I'm thank you for sharing that. And I hope that those that are listening understand she literally had a team of support from her gym to her family, and even down to how she was planning her schedule. You mentioned school. Were you homeschooled or were you going to a local school there in the
When
area?
I moved, so in Cayman, I was in a regular school. And then when I was 14 and started living and training in Texas, I switched to online school. Just because our training schedule was a lot. We could not go to regular school.
Correct. So Eddie, I'm going to bring you back into the conversation and help the parents to know, like what age, what level, if that they should realistically continue to hold on to the idea of training for the Olympics.
You know, that's a hard question, because if you look at some of the past Olympians, some of them were later bloomers. Like if you look at early films of like J.C. Phelps, who made the '96 team, the Magnificent Seven, you would look at her gymnastics and you wouldn't say, okay, that's going to be one of the leading gymnasts for our country to set the bar for Olympic gold medal. And then you look at a Nastia, who she could have made the Olympic team the 4 years prior and probably gone out and won an individual medal. So it's really hard to say. And what I always tell everybody is just, you know, not to be afraid to set a goal, not to be afraid to have a dream, and then just to go fully after that, because all you can do is give 100%. And those are the two things that I only require from my athletes is, one, always give 100%, two, always have a good attitude. And then from there, whatever happens is going to happen. Because like I said, not everybody goes to the Olympics. It's a very select few. And, you know, at the end of the day, like myself, for example, I trained my whole life to follow my brother's footsteps to make it to the Olympics. And unfortunately, I ended my career on a knee injury. But I was totally content because I knew I had done everything within my personal power within my spirit, my body, my mind, my soul to get there. So even though I ended on that mark, I was able to look back and say, hey, I gave it all I got. I did everything I could, and that's all I can ask for.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that perspective as well. Eddie, this is also for you. Raegan's family and coach knew that in order for her to get to that ultimate goal, she would need to leave K-Man and find the gym, which ultimately ended up being yours. And she was your first Olympic gymnast, correct?
That's right.
So help the parents who are watching and saying, my daughter has her aspirations to be an Olympic gymnast, or even if not that, a collegiate gymnast, because I'm sure in your gym you probably have more collegiate gymnasts than you do Olympic gymnasts at this point, just because of the sheer number, like we just said, it's such a finite number of individuals who are going to be that committed to doing it. So help the audience by sharing with them what to look for in a gym when they are wanting to take it to the next level.
It with the program that's going to fit for that. You know, for me as a gym owner, as a coach, I'm looking for, my goal is to help these athletes to be able to get to the end of the road. So even my level fives right now, I'm not training them just for level five. I'm training them in a sense of, I want these kids to be able to get a college scholarship. And my wife and I believe in that so strongly because my wife was able to compete for Oregon State. I was able to compete for Michigan. And it opened up so many incredible doors, being able to be a part of a team, being able to, you know, just simple things like being able to have free access to tutors and to get the classes that you need first.
That you need to succeed. I bet that's what he was going to say.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that's what he was going to say too. Let me ask you this, because you said that you did both. When you were in K-Man, you did local school. And then because of the hours, that when you transferred to Eddie's gym, you switched to online school. 2 questions. Which one did you enjoy the most? And how many hours were you practicing?
So I obviously loved going to school. For me, academically, it was so much better. And this is just personal, to be in a classroom and have that interaction. But again, if I needed to get that next level in gymnastics, I needed to take that step. So when I started online school, it was honestly good, but I actually had to get a tutor. I paid for a tutor to come to my host family's house and help me with subjects like calculus, physics, ones that are like necessary to have someone tell you like, this is how you do this equation. And then hours of training wise, I can't remember. I think when I was in high school, it was like 35 hours a week, 35 and a half, 37, something like that. And then before the Olympics, I wasn't doing 2-a-day practices anymore. So it was a little less, but I can't, maybe Eddie help me out, 27?
Yeah, I think we were right around that 27 to 29 mark because for Raegan, you know, we kind of came to the point where we knew she didn't quite need the 2 days. She didn't need the extra because it was just going to break down her body.
Right.
So we also just had to be really smart in how we were training her and all the athletes.
Exactly. Raegan, I had another question for you. So one of the things that people who are critics of competitive sports is they say, oh, they're missing so much of their youth. They're not able to do what their friends can do. Share with the listening audience your take on that based off of your experience.
So it's funny you say that because I'm in a sports psychology class right now. And something that always gets brought up is like specialization in sports. And I'm like one of only 2 people in the class that actually agree with it because I mean, for me, I was successful with it. I obviously missed out on things like birthday parties and stuff. But when I moved to Texas, especially my sophomore, junior, senior year, I started hanging out so there was kind of two groups of training times. There was the homeschool, which was what I was part of, and then there was the afternoon group of girls. So for me, I was friends also with the afternoon group of girls who went to high school. So if they had like a football game, like I would go with them, or if they had homecoming, I would go with them. So for me, I was really lucky because I did get best of both worlds. But in the grand scheme of things, nothing will ever compare to the Olympics. So I felt like I did not miss out on anything. If anything, people are missing out.
Touche. Absolutely. There is nothing, absolutely nothing that is going to trump making it to the Olympics and being the first to represent your country. Nothing, no other experience going through high school or even beyond is going to ever compare to that. And so you have that as a memory to look back on, and that is awesome.
Even not just like the Olympics, like competitions like Pan Am Games, like I still look at, like I like reminisce on that meet just because of how fun it was. Like representing your country is legitimately the biggest privilege and honor and the most fun thing you could do. So I think for me, I did something no one else has ever done, which is a lot better than going to prom or football games or holding hands in the hallway. Like
I agree wholeheartedly. I agree wholeheartedly. That is excellent. So Eddie, she mentioned that she had a host family, and so parents are listening and they're like, okay, I understand. I get the commitment, the time commitment that's involved in this. Talk about some of the other actual logistics that parents need to consider when it's time to make that move, especially if there's not a gym close by.
Yeah, well, it's obviously a huge commitment, but what the families have to also remember is this is your child now. It's not just some random kid coming in and taking up a room. Like you need to feed them. You need to feed them with positive energy. You need to speak good words into them, because Raegan has experienced it all, and I can only imagine for some of the athletes who have been in Raegan's position, where you get with a family that maybe may not have the most positive energy, or may not necessarily support exactly what you do. They just know they need to get you to practice at a certain time and pick you up. But there's a lot that's entailed into that, is actually caring for these athletes and supporting them and what they do, because it's a big process, and it's not just showing up at gym and doing gymnastics. There's a mental part to it. There's a big emotional part to it. For Raegan and I both, there was a huge spiritual part to it. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that goes into it that a lot of people probably don't even
think about.
Yeah.
So he brought up something, Raegan, that I was going to ask you. How difficult or how scary was it, or if it was at all, for you to know that I'm going to this strange family that I don't know very well?
So I actually live with 4 different host families.
Oh my.
Yeah. So the first one, I had no clue who they were. They lived an hour and a half away from, or like an hour and a half away from the gym. The lady worked at the front desk of the gym, and her daughter also did gymnastics. They lived in a 2-bedroom house and 1 bathroom. So that was a big adjustment for me. Not only am I living in a stranger's house, but I'm also going to share a bathroom. Not to sound like I'm like
at 14
or anything,
right.
But I like privacy.
Exactly. So, well, I don't know any 14-year-old who doesn't like their own privacy. Let's just go ahead and say that.
You know how it goes.
Exactly.
So for me, that was a big adjustment. But like I said, I lived with 4 different host families. So that host family was incredible. I loved them. They made me such great food. I always got French toast, so I was happy. I remember the first meal they got me was Chick-fil-A, and every year I get the Snapchat memory of I fell asleep in the host family's car and woke up at Chick-fil-A. I think I'm gonna be okay. Like it's something like that. But then you adjust to a host family, and then something happens and you have to leave. And then you have to like readjust. And like Eddie said, every family was different. And I had to adjust every time to them. And then because I was adjusting to the family, I had to adjust my school. And then I had to adjust gymnastics. But in saying that, I couldn't bring anything into gymnastics. So that was a bit tricky.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So now the decision has been made that you all are all in. Obviously, Raegan, you're all in. You've just left your family and Cayman, and now Eddie, you're like, okay, I've got this person who is ready to go to the Olympics. It is go time. Share with the viewing audience a look, the high level part of the road to the Olympics. Eddie, what was you and your wife's game plan to get her there? Because she shows up at your gym door and pretty much is being dropped off and saying, make this happen.
Yeah, well, honestly, I don't even know where to start because there was so much planning, and especially when COVID hit, it kind of changed the game for us. But it actually, what we tried to look at it as, let's take the advantages of what this is offering, is what COVID did. It put everything online, and we knew that nobody could compete in the world. Nobody had a chance to go out there and do their gymnastics and show what they had. So when I talked to Raegan, I said, okay, this is our game plan. We're going to video everything. Everything good that we do is going to be on tape. We're just going to keep the camera rolling, and it's going straight to social media. And we're tagging PAGU, which is like the Pan American Gymnastics Union, which is like USAG of Pan America. We're tagging FIG. We're tagging USAG. We're tagging everyone so the whole world can see it, so that they know that we're in the gym grinding, that we're ready, because we didn't even know if there was going to be Olympics or not. But we did know that we wanted them to know. Right. And then there wasn't. But we wanted them to know that, listen, if it became a last second thing like, hey, we're going to have the Olympics next week, we wanted them to know we were ready. So we really took advantage of that. And we just hit social media hard, just posting. And it actually worked because I got a phone call on my birthday. I till this day I still can't tell you who. I'm not allowed to tell anybody who was on the other end,
Right.
but it was a call from Switzerland, and as we know, FIG, that's their headquarters.
Right.
And they told me, they said, Eddie Umphrey, you need to be ready. And I said, be ready for what? And they said, you need to be ready for the Olympic Games. And I said, well, don't joke around with me. Like this is what
chills.
I've been working for my whole life, you know? Yeah. I mean, I get emotional talking about all the Olympic stuff, how it happened, but they said, listen, we've been following you guys. We've been watching every step that you've been taking. We know that Raegan goes to the University of Florida, or is at least starting back up, and, you know, things that got shut down for COVID, so they're not there now. But what we don't want to happen is that we make the announcement that she's going to go to the Olympics and she thinks that she's done and she's back at school. So you guys keep doing what you're doing, keep training. We can't finalize it, but officially, unofficially, she's going to the Olympics. And I was like, and I can't share this information, you know?
Yeah, I didn't know about this until after I made it. I just want to put
and I couldn't. I couldn't tell Raegan, because the other thing I didn't want to do is I didn't want to come in and say, Raegan, we're going to the Olympics, and then something comes up and they say, hey, it's not happening. You know, that I literally would have just crushed her world. So in that moment, they told me not to tell anybody. I did call her mom, because her mom takes care of all the travel and everything. And I said, I just telling you to be prepared. And then I called my sister, Natalie, and I broke down. I broke down crying, just bawling. And
That is
I'm getting emotional talking about it, because it was such a journey. And I'll say this is part of the way that God works and the way everything worked. Is a year prior to that, this was on my birthday that I got the call. A year prior to that, on my birthday.
I'll say a story. A year prior to that, on his birthday. Or should I wait? I just know the story.
No, you can go ahead and share it. He'll add back to it.
Just so the show keeps flowing. So a year on his birthday, basically him and Johnny were trying to start up their own program. They were looking at places to kind of lease so that we could train, because they still had girls that wanted to be trained under Johnny and Eddie. But COVID, everything got messed up. So they had to start kind of looking for a different place. And he got a call. I'm pretty sure that we couldn't be somewhere. And he said that he just cried in his car because he thought that it was over, that he was done coaching and stuff. So his
Oh,
story is then
wow.
he thinks he's done like coaching and stuff on one birthday.
Am I back? I can literally hear everything. I'm looking and watching the whole show. I'm watching the show like everybody at home. I'm just not a part of it, I guess.
Did I have it right?
Yeah, that was pretty good. That was pretty good.
You go ahead and finish it up. So
I like to add a lot of more, dramatization to it. So what had happened, like Raegan said, we were looking for a place to lease, and I went to all the gyms in the entire community and just asking for space, and no after no after no after no, and I went to the last place, and the guy talked to me, and it kind of felt like it was a no, but then he asked me a question. He said, "Hey, what's your relationship with so and so?" And he I'm not going to mention the name. And, I just kind of told what the relationship is. And he said, "Oh, because they called me and told me not to let you rent space because you're a bad guy." And I thought, what? And so immediately I know what that is. It's someone trying to keep us planted in the area because, and I don't say this at all to brag or boast that I'm better than anybody, but these people know how good my wife and I are as coaches, as people, and on that together. And that if we plant somewhere, there's a possibility, you're going to lose some of your clientele. And I will say, I don't recruit athletes. I don't believe in it. Never have, never will.
Right.
Now, if athlete walks into my door and says, "Hey, I'm looking for information," I'm going to give you information. So I went in my car and I just bawled because I felt like all these families, these kids who came to us and asked for us to try to find something. Now I've let them down. I also have to go home and let my wife know that we have nothing right now. And so I literally just sat in my car and I just broke down, just broke down, just bawled, like literally like just a grown man crying like a baby, just feeling like I've let everyone down, failed everyone. And this was on my birthday. So fast forward to 365 days later, and I'm sitting in the same seat in my car and getting a call while I'm driving on the way to practice saying, "Get ready for the Olympic Games." And it was complete different 180 tears.
Absolutely. That is the way God works. He always
Absolutely.
works it out to where it's going to be for our good. We probably wouldn't go the road that he sends us down because it's got so many detours and disappointments. And if he shared that with us
Agreed.
on the front side, we would give up and we wouldn't keep pursuing it. So he gives us what we can handle in the moment. And that is an amazing story. So
Well said.
we're at the Olympics now, and I want each of you, before we go into our final segment, share one thing about either the Olympics or the journey to get there that is sticking with you the most. And I know that's hard because there's so many, but give me one thing. Raegan, you can go first.
Oh gosh, I'm thinking. Okay, I'll say something that I think like younger gymnasts will like. Is like I remember when I was 15, I was at one of my host families, and it was one that wasn't the best fit, and I was really struggling with every aspect of life because of it. I was like struggling in gym at this point. School, my grades were plummeting because I just had I was basically depressed, and I remember I just wanted to be done with gym. I called my sister and my mom. I said I can't do this anymore. I'm done with it because I remember saying I can't suffer like this anymore. And then I think I went on Instagram or something, and it was the quote, and it said, "Do not come this far to just come this far."
Yes.
And from that day, I remember I've made all these sacrifices up to this point. I can't stop these sacrifices just because I'm sad right now, because I want my future self to thank my past self for never giving up. So for me, I guess the younger gymnasts always say, never come this far or don't come this far just to come this far.
That was so well said. And the gift that you gave yourself, gifting yourself through that difficult time and giving yourself permission, number one, to feel the feels, because life's all of us. And then recognizing from a mental standpoint, because of course that's my area, that I didn't come this far just to come this far. Like there is more to it, and I can do hard things, and this is a hard thing, and I'm gonna do this hard thing too. How about you, Eddie? What is something that you remember about the journey that the two of you took, or even the Olympics itself?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I want people to know is that, especially for the gym.
No, Eddie, I was excited to hear what you were gonna say. No, I was like on the edge of my seat. I know he can hear me too.
He can hear us. He can
Eddie,
see
I'm
us.
excited. Eddie's gonna say I was the best in this. No, I'm joking.
Well, so far, that brings up me a question. So you were the first, and that was the Tokyo Olympics that you went to. So
Yes,
you were the
ma'am.
first from his gym, and with you being the first from the gym, what now is it like? Are there other girls that are on that track that because you inspired them to do that from the gym?
Eddie and Johnny are very lucky in the sense that they have a bunch of other international girls. I believe they still do. I hope they still do, because it's just, if you're from a different country, and these girls are like literally have the passport to that country, and they're not like, oh, my grandfather's aunt was born in blah 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 blah.
Right. No,
Like they're legit, whatever country that is. So I think for them, I was bragging that y'all had other international gymnasts.
I heard it all. I know. I'm watching the show. I'm a fan.
Okay. Let's go back.
I don't even know when it cuts out. I just keep talking, and I don't even know that it's cutting out. I guess I'm sitting here talking to myself, and then I'm watching you guys carry the show on.
Share with us that conversation that you had with yourself, because you had started off by saying, what I want those that are watching to know.
Yes, what all the athletes and parents have to understand is that Raegan didn't just show up and everything was great and she made it and there was no struggle. Raegan went through every single struggle that every single athlete that I've ever coached has gone through and more. I would say that Raegan probably went through more struggles than I would say 75%. And I'm not gonna list those, but what was a big thing for Raegan and I was, it was like I said before, it was a big spiritual journey. And there was times where we would both be struggling in practice. And I will say, and Raegan's okay with me saying this because we've said it before, she had two of her toughest and probably worst practices in her career. And one was the day before we left for the Olympics. And the second one was the first day of training at the Olympics. And you think that everything is aligned and, you made it to the Olympics and you go, well, you're still struggling with the internal comparison of all the other girls. You're still struggling with, Raegan's never even talked about that she severely sprained her ankle just a couple weeks prior to that, and we had been through it so many times, and we had gone through so many Bible studies together of Paul overcoming. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and being content in every circumstance, whether having too much or having very little. That the ankle sprain really wasn't an issue, but just what she went through mentally and emotionally the day before the Olympics and at the Olympic Games, it's everything that every athlete struggles with. And the only difference was that Raegan was able to dig deep and overcome, because we had that conversation at the Olympics where we were struggling on bars. I put a post on it on my Instagram, and we're hitting the bar, we're falling, we're crashing. Like it was pretty rough. I mean, there's brutal. It was brutal to the point where, the rest of the athletes in our session are kind of cheering us on, like, we want to see you succeed,
Yes.
And I had that talk with Raegan, and I said, listen, we can do one of two things. We can be done. We can be done with the Olympics. And as hard as that would be for me to accept, I would fully support if Raegan said, listen, I just don't think it's safe. We need to pull back. And we would have pulled back. Or, and the other option I said, or what we do is we dig deep, we get this done, because if you want to compete in the Olympic Games, I said, Raegan, do you want to compete in the Olympic Games? Obviously, she said yes. And I said, you need to prove to me that you are ready for the Olympic Games, and really just put it right back on her. And she said, I want to compete in the Olympic Games. So I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go home. Practice is over. We're going to go back to the Olympic Village. We're going to get some food, take a little nap. We're coming right back to the gym. And you have to prove to me, you have to show me those skills if you want to compete in the Olympics. And she said, okay. So we did that. We went back to the village. We went, got a good meal, got some rest. We came back and and like I said, those videos are on Instagram. There's nobody there, and we're just training in the gym, just training, going to the grind. And I know the buttons to push on Raegan. I know what to push and pull. And we did it, and we had a lot of fun doing it. It was extremely hard, but we made like a whole dance video out of her little breakdancing up rock thing. And even she's doing her ganger, and you can hear me say, do the dance. And I just kept the phone rolling because I wanted people to see this. I want people to see this journey. And it's a big thing that I talk about when I give motivational talks. I talk about Raegan's journey. I talk about my brother Cheney's journey, because we see NBC and we watch the Olympics, and we just see the end, but we don't get to see the struggle of what many of these athletes go through and how they got there. And so that's the biggest thing. I'm kind of rambling on now, but I just really want everyone to know, because you get it all the time. The kids that get to that age, the 12 through 15, they want to quit. They want to go to the parties. They want to go to movies with their friends. And that's great. But I can tell you, kids at home, you're not missing out. I've had athletes, when I coached in Michigan, I remember distinctly I had an athlete who really struggled with that, and I was able to keep her in the sport. And she came back afterwards and she said, you know what, I am so happy that you kept me in the sport, because I see where all of those friends that I wanted to hang out with, I see where they ended up, and I see where I am now. And I see what that did for me. And I realize now on the back end, I didn't miss out on anything, and it's hard, because you do want to do those things. You want to go to the dances, and it's not to say that you can't or shouldn't, but look at Kobe, the Mamba mentality. If you want to be great, you got to make sacrifices. I can't tell you how many kids come in the gym and say, I want to go to the Olympics, and parents say, I want to go to the Olympics, and 2 months goes by, and I'm looking at them saying, you've worked out 4 days out of the 2 months, and I know you're banged up, I know you're bumped, I know you're bruised, but what Raegan was really good at, if we had an ankle injury, we were always doing something else productive. It wasn't complete shutdown. It wasn't, okay, I'm not coming in the gym tomorrow because my hands hurt, I have rips, or my ankles hurt, or I'm tired. Well, it's life. It's tough, and it's a life lesson. So, but that's the biggest thing I would say is just the the perseverance, the sacrifice, and knowing that Raegan's a true example. Any of these kids, you can overcome anything. You can overcome anything.
That's an excellent point to make. And of course, you all were there with Simone when she went through her twisties and had to pull out. And so mental health was just thrusted there. And you sharing that even Raegan had her own, where she had just leaving right before there, not a great workout, getting there, not a great workout. And then you giving her the space and the permission to say, hey, it's your call to make. And I think that's a big emphasis that I took away from what you just shared, that I want the parents to understand that space and that giving that permission to their athlete to be able to call it quits, or to say, shut it down. Like, mentally, I'm not there yet. I'm not there. And then as the coach, you could step in and say, okay, this is what we need to do. With me being a performance and mindset coach for athletes specifically, this is for you, Eddie, how important do you see the need for that on that level?
Oh, it's huge. It's essential, because what I think the athletes and parents have to do is they have to take accountability of what's going on. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, if you're having struggle or something that you're having issue with, you got to speak about it. You got to speak up about it. And if you're not getting the job done, and I've said this over and over, and it's unfortunate that we do have athletes doing this, is not using mental health as an excuse of your shortcomings. Take accountability. If you fall, it's okay. You fell. It's okay. Just own it. It's okay. Yeah. But and it's unfortunate, because we are in a society, we are seeing that where a lot of people are, know the right terms to use and say, oh, it was mental health. Well, really what it was you didn't put in the work. You didn't get the job done. And it's not the coach's fault. It's not
Yeah.
the equipment's fault. It's not your, the environment's fault. You just take responsibility for it. You missed the game winning shot, move on. But mental health is a very serious issue, and especially when we start throwing in sports, and especially when we start throwing in a sport like gymnastics, because I've seen it happen all the time with cheerleaders. You're flipping upside down, and you stop. Well, now you've got a broken arm, and so those things need to be taken very seriously, and it's important. All the athletes watching out there, communicate with your parents, communicate with your coaches, communicate with whoever. I always encourage athletes, parents, married couples, whoever, go to therapy, go speak to a therapist. It's even if there's nothing wrong, it's one thing that they talk about in my church. Sometimes everything feels great. Well, you know what? I'm still going to set up an appointment every couple months, go talk to a therapist, because it's just healthy. It's just good.
Yes.
And there's probably, I think, a bad stigma with it of people don't want to seek help. Go. I've been to a therapist because it's just good for you.
Yes.
So I do highly recommend it.
I saw a sports psychologist throughout my gymnastics too.
I was just getting ready to ask you what happened on your side. So it was a sports psychologist that you had to work with.
Yeah. For me, when I was around 17, I got really depressed, and my parents just thought, oh, she needs to go talk to a sports psychologist. But she helped me realize that majority of my issues weren't even gymnastics caused. But for me, it was just nice having a safe place to someone to talk to, because especially for me, my parents living out of the country, I didn't want them to worry about me. And I never wanted to complain about gymnastics because I knew how much they also sacrificed.
Mm-hmm.
And then living with host families, I also did not feel always comfortable saying, like, I'm really sad. And then coaches, you don't want to burden them and stuff like that. So for me, sports psychologists also, I would say, saved my gymnastics career.
That's a good point to make. How from the athlete's perspective that they have these things weighing on them, but the process of thinking of where they can get the help from or who they should be sharing it with is very important. I don't want the audience to miss that. I know when I am contacted by parents to work with their athletes, I have had at least 3 of them that said that the athlete asked for a coach to help them with this, to understand it. And to your point, Raegan, most of the time it has nothing to do with their sport and it's usually working with things that are outside of the sport and helping them to grasp that. And just knowing that it was an integral part of your team. So we're getting ready to wrap up, and I just want to know, well, what's next? I heard, Raegan, you mentioned that you're at the University of Georgia. University of Florida. Sorry about
Go
that.
Gators!
That's a big
That was
one.
a big slip for me because
Those are rivals.
University
Yeah,
of
those
Georgia.
are rivals.
They are, and a big rival. So you're there at the University of Florida, and you're majoring in psychology.
Yes.
And tell us what else.
Minor in business.
Because you're just that overachiever. And what else outside of school are you doing? How are you still staying connected with gymnastics?
So I currently coach at a little club called Sun Country Sports Center, because for me, after the Olympic Games, although my gymnastics career was probably going to come to an end, I didn't want my involvement in this sport, and I wanted to use my story to help not only gymnasts but other athletes. And I also love kids, so I coach it now.
That is awesome, and I'm sure it is so much different on that side than it was for you. But the one thing that you have that most coaches don't, you have that whole full journey that you can share with the athletes, and you can be more relatable to them when they're going through their different things. So thank you so much for staying with the sport and giving back to the sport. I always tell my athletes, make sure you give more than you take so that you can leave your mark on whatever it is. How about you, Eddie? What's next?
Yeah, well, I've got my program here we're in Katy, Texas, Grace Gymnastics. So, we've got that rolling. I've been doing a lot more speaking around the country. Really, motivational speaking is my passion, and it works well because I don't have to lose time out of the gym. But, I love to get inside of gyms, businesses, companies, schools, whatever, and just, share the journey of how Reagan got there, how I got there, how my brother got there, and doing a lot more clinics and spotting clinics, things like that, lectures. I just this summer did the Gymnastics Association of Texas, which went really well. I'm
Hmm.
hoping to actually next year do National Congress as well,
Yeah.
and got a few things lined up internationally as well with a couple national teams internationally. So yeah, just staying busy and like you said, trying to give back to the sport because I didn't get here on my own. I didn't get here
Hmm.
without a lot of love and support, and so I
Hmm.
definitely want to, feed the next generation and anybody who's willing to take anything in.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you both of you. I'm definitely going to have you all to come back because there's so much still here on the table that we can talk about. And I know that the audience is going to want to know more because I usually only go 30 minutes and I'm looking up and we're already 60 minutes into this and I still want to keep going. I do a call to action where I share how the audience can get in touch with you, and you all can find them. And don't worry about keeping up with this. I'm going to put it in the show notes. You can find them on their Instagram that's listed here. And if you want to reach out to them by email, this is their email addresses. Let's see, Eddie, what's the name of your gym?
It's called Grace Gymnastics.
Grace Gymnastics
Grace Gymnastics. Yep.
in Katy, Texas.
In Katy,
So
Texas, yeah, our big thing is, obviously the grace of gymnastics, the artistry of gymnastics, but also, we've been very blessed. So, the grace of God, we didn't get her on our own.
right. Absolutely. I love it. Now, I do have final thoughts with all of my guests, and you all won't be any different. I would like for you to share the one mindset shift as it relates to the road to the Olympics that you want to leave with the audience. Eddie, we'll let you go first.
You know what? Be content in every circumstance. Be totally put in all the work that you can do so that if it doesn't happen, you'll be completely satisfied. Because for me as a gymnast, I had to realize that the hard way, not getting to the Olympics after falling on an injury, and as a coach, not knowing if we were going to go to the Olympics, and I got to the point where I just said, you know what? I'm content. If I never get to the Olympics, I'm going to be just as happy as if I go. And I think and it wasn't until then it actually got the phone call saying going to the Olympics. So just do everything you can to put yourself in a place that you can say, I've done it all.
Eddie, I
Absolutely.
was gonna say that. Uh, but then I thought of another one. Eddie
Okay,
always told me
Raegan.
to be content, so that's like engraved in my brain.
Yes.
That was
I
kind of our thing, though. That was our thing.
what is the saying? Like, keep calm and carry on. Yeah, that's
That's a
my
good one.
gymnastics career. Sometimes I feel like, but I think
Yeah.
my thing that I want listeners to take away is to enjoy it while you can and don't take it too seriously. I mean, obviously, yes, practice hard, be focused in practice, but when it comes to competitions, like just enjoy it because my almost one of my biggest regrets that I had halfway through my gymnastics career was I looked back and I was like, why was I so stressed? Just enjoy the
Mm.
competition, but I'm also glad that I
Mm.
had that regret because then after those after that thought and epiphany, I was able to enjoy the competitions more because I knew that I wanted to, and future Raegan would thank me. So, and then when you turn 20, you realize, oh my gosh, I was too serious sometimes. So just enjoy it, love it, have fun.
Thank you both so very much for joining me. And like I said, don't be surprised if I don't reach back out and say, hey, we've got to do a part 2 to this, because it's
Would love to do it.
definitely,
Yes.
well, thank you all. I'm going to say goodbye to the audience, and then I'm going to be right back with you, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. There you have it, everyone. How exciting was that to meet a former Olympian as well as her coach, and them share what it was like to get to the road to on the road to the Olympics, and just the nuggets. They left so much. We did talk about mental health, and we did talk about the importance of athletes having that support system. So if you're a parent watching this or an athlete watching this, and you're like, hey, I want to try to connect with someone so that I can have this person as a part of my team. Well, that's where I come in. You're a mindset coach. You can find me and follow me on all of my social media. I made it really easy for you: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, at Christina Mindset Coach. And if you're wanting to set up a free 15-minute clarity call just to learn what it would be like to work with me, you can go to my website and you can schedule your clarity call, and I would be happy to work with you. And until the next episode, remember, your life is only as good as your mindset. Make it a good one.
Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Coach. Please be sure to follow Coach Christina on all of her social media platforms. And remember, life is only as good as your mindset.